She partied all night with her guy best friend and told me to leave if I didn't like it. So I did. I didn't argue, didn't beg, didn't shout. I left. What she didn't expect was that I wouldn't come back the way she imagined. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Evan Crossley, and for most of my adult life, I believed trust meant tolerance. I believed loving someone meant giving them freedom, even when that freedom made you uncomfortable. My girlfriend, Maribel Haynes, used to praise me for that. She called me secure, mature, not like other guys. I wore those words like a badge of honor, until I realized they were just another way of telling me to stay quiet. Maribel had a guy best friend named Rowan Pike. According to her, Rowan had been there before me, and he would be there long after me. I was told that early on, almost like a disclaimer. If that's a problem, she'd said once, laughing, we probably shouldn't date. I didn't want to be insecure, so I swallowed my doubts and convinced myself that trust meant ignoring instincts. The night everything broke started casually. Maribel was getting ready to go out. Music playing, makeup perfect, dress chosen carefully. I asked where she was going. She said Rowan's birthday plans had turned into a party. I asked who else would be there. She shrugged, already annoyed. I told her I wasn't comfortable with her staying out all night drinking with Rowan. I didn't accuse her of cheating. I didn't demand anything. I just asked for reassurance. She laughed, actually laughed, and said, Evan, if you don't like it, you know where the door is. She expected silence, submission, an apology. Instead, I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and reached for my keys. Her expression shifted instantly. Wait, you're serious? I looked at her and said calmly, You just told me to leave. She rolled her eyes and said, I didn't think you'd actually do it. That sentence changed everything. Because in that moment, I realized she never respected my boundaries, only my compliance. I walked out, not knowing that this single decision would expose everything she thought she could get away with. The air partied all night with her guy best friend and told me to leave if I didn't like it. I sat in my car for a few minutes. I didn't argue, didn't beg, didn't shout, replaying the argument in my head. What she didn't expect was that I wouldn't come back the way she imagined. I hadn't yelled. Stick with me while I share my story. And if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button and somehow dropping a like. That made me the villain sharing it with the people you care about. My phone buzzed as I drove. My name is Evan Crossley. A message from Maribel. For most of my adult life, are you really doing this? I believe trust meant tolerance. I didn't reply. I 10 minutes loving later, someone meant another notification popped up, even when that this time it wasn't uncomfortable. It was from my girlfriend, Maribel Haynes. It was a photo. Used to praise me for that. A group of people crowded around a table. She called me secure. Drinks everywhere. Mature. Music not like other guys. The background. I wore those words like close to Maribel. His arm until I realized they were just another way of telling me to stay quiet. She was smiling. Maribel had a guy best friend named Rowan Pike. That picture didn't prove cheating. According to her, it proved Rowan had been there before me. She didn't care how it would be there long after me because she didn't believe I'd ever leave. I was told that early on, almost like a disclaimer. I ended up at my older brother Calvin Crossley's apartment that night, laughing. He didn't press me for details. Probably shouldn't date. He just looked at my face and said, so I swallowed my doubts. Someone who finally stopped lying to himself. Trust meant ignoring. We sat in silence for a while. The night everything broke started casually. My chest Maribel was getting ready to go out. The next morning, music Maribel called like nothing had happened. Dress chosen carefully. Her voice was casual. I asked where she was going. She said Rowan's birthday plans had turned into a party. Are you done being dramatic now? I asked who else would be there. She honestly believed I'd cool off. She shrugged, already annoyed. When I told her I wasn't comfortable with her staying out all night drinking with Rowan. She accused me of overreacting. I didn't accuse her of cheating. She said I was embarrassing. I didn't demand anything. She told me I was making her look bad over nothing. She laughed. That's when I realized something important. Evan, if you don't like it, you know where the door is. She was upset that I disrupted her control. Submission. An apology. Instead, I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and reached for my keys. Her expression shifted instantly. Wait, you're serious? I looked at her and said calmly, You just told me to leave. She rolled her eyes and said, I didn't think you'd actually do it. That sentence changed everything. Because in that moment, I realized she never respected my boundaries, only my compliance. I walked out, not knowing that this single decision would expose everything she thought she could get away with. Over the next few days, Maribel rewrote history. According to her, I was insecure, immature, jealous. She said Rowan was like family, and any man who couldn't handle that had issues. She spoke as if my feelings were defects rather than signals. I asked her one question. If nothing was wrong, why did you tell me to leave instead of reassuring me? She dodged it. Instead, she said things like, You're punishing me for having friends, and you're acting controlling. The irony was painful. I hadn't controlled her. I'd removed myself. And that terrified her. Then Rowan started texting me directly. Not apologizing. Not clarifying. Warning me. He said Maribel was hurt because of me. That I needed to grow up. That she deserved someone more confident. That was when I understood Rowan's role clearly. He wasn't just a friend. He was an option. A backup. Someone who benefited from me staying silent. Suddenly, the late nights, the dismissive laughs, the don't be dramatic comments all made sense. I wasn't insecure. I was inconvenient. Over the next few days, stopped defending my history. I told Maribel I needed space. I was insecure. Not as a tactic, but as a decision. She said Rowan was like family. You'll be back in a week. Who couldn't handle that week changed me. Without her noise, as if my feelings were saw the relationship rather than signals. I saw how often my discomfort had been minimized. If nothing was wrong, how quickly my boundaries were mocked. Why did you tell me to leave instead of reassuring me? How easily she'd told me to leave. She dodged it because she never believed she said things like, "By the end of that punishing me for having friends, and if I went back now, I'd be teaching her that disrespect had no cost. I hadn't controlled her, so I didn't go back myself." And that's when Maribel started to panic. Then Rowan started texting me directly. Not apologizing. Not clarifying. Warning me. He said Maribel was hurt because of me. That I needed to grow up. That she deserved someone more confident. That was when I understood Rowan's role clearly. He wasn't just a friend. He was an option. A backup. Someone who benefited from me staying silent. Suddenly, the late nights, the dismissive laughs, the don't be dramatic comments all made sense. I wasn't insecure. I was inconvenient. The second week after I left was when Maribel finally understood something had changed. The texts that once sounded playful started carrying urgency. At first, she framed it like concern, asking if I was okay, reminding me we needed to talk. When I didn't respond the way she expected, her tone sharpened. She accused me of being dramatic, then manipulative, then childish. Every message revealed the same belief, that my leaving was temporary, a tantrum I'd eventually abandon. I stayed quiet, not out of spite, but because every conversation with her had become a trap. She didn't want dialogue, she wanted control restored. She wanted me back in the position where my discomfort could be dismissed and her choices remained unquestioned. A few nights later, she called. I answered once calmly. She immediately launched into frustration, saying I was ruining everything over one stupid night. I asked her if she would have said the same thing if the roles were reversed. If I'd stayed out all night partying with a woman who clearly didn't respect her place in my life. She went silent. Then she snapped that it wasn't the same thing. That was when I said, "It's always the same thing when respect is missing." She didn't respond to that. Instead, she said Rowan felt like I was attacking him for no reason. That sentence said more than she realized. Rowan wasn't neutral. He was involved enough to have feelings about my boundaries. When I hung up, I didn't feel angry. I felt settled. I wasn't leaving to punish her. I was leaving to protect myself. And that difference mattered. The second week later, after I left, was when Maribel finally understood something. This time it wasn't passive-aggressive. The text that once sounded playful told me Maribel was struggling. That I was being unfair. At first, she framed it like concern. That real men asking if I was okay, out over insecurity, reminding me we needed to talk. I read the message twice. When I didn't respond the way she expected, but because it clarified everything. She accused me of being dramatic, like a friend defending someone's happiness. Then childish. He spoke like a man guarding every message territory. Revealed the same belief. He said Maribel deserved that my leaving was trusted her completely. A tantrum I'd eventually replied with one sentence. I stayed quiet. If you respect her relationship, you wouldn't be texting every conversation with her had become a trap. He didn't respond. She didn't want dialogue. Told me everything. She wanted control. He had benefited from my patience. She wanted me back in the position from my willingness to doubt myself, could be dismissed instead of questioning. Her choices remained unquestioned. Now that I'd stepped away, a few nights later, she called. I answered hide once behind, calmly. Just a friend anymore. She immediately launched later into that frustration. Night, Maribel saying I was again. Ruining everything. Her voice was softer this time. Night. She said I asked her if she would have said the same thing if the roles were reversed. She said I was blowing things out of proportion. If I'd stayed out all night, she said if I came back, we could set better boundaries. Clearly didn't respect her place. I asked her a simple question. She went silent. Why weren't boundaries? Then she snapped that it wasn't the same thing. She didn't answer. That was when I said she couldn't. It's always the same thing. Because boundaries only mattered now that she'd lost leverage. She didn't respond to that. Instead, she said Rowan felt like I was attacking him for no reason. That sentence said more than she realized. Rowan wasn't neutral. He was involved enough to have feelings about my boundaries. When I hung up, I didn't feel angry. I felt settled. I wasn't leaving to punish her. I was leaving to protect myself. And that difference mattered. By the third week, Maribel's confidence was gone. She stopped joking. Stopped lecturing. She started asking, carefully, what I wanted. She said she missed me. Missed our routines. Missed how safe things felt. That word again, safe. I realized she didn't miss me. She missed the version of herself who never had to face consequences. She missed knowing I'd always be there to absorb discomfort, so she didn't have to. She admitted the partying had continued after I left. She said it helped her not think. That honesty, accidental as it was, sealed my decision. Someone who runs toward distraction when faced with accountability isn't ready for partnership. I told her I wasn't coming back unless something fundamentally changed. She asked what that meant. I said it meant respect without negotiation. She said I was giving ultimatums. I said, no. I'm setting standards. That difference rattled her more than anger ever could. By the third shift happened, Maribel's confidence was myself altogether. She stopped joking. No defending. Stopped lecturing. No convincing. She started asking decisions carefully what I wanted. Maribel showed up unannounced. She said she missed evening. Missed our routine conversation. Missed how safe I didn't let her in. That word spoke outside briefly. I realized she didn't miss me. Not angry. She missed the version of herself just never had to face consequences. She asked why I was being so distant. She missed knowing I'd always be there to absorb discomfort. So she told me to leave if I didn't like it. She admitted the party and I finally listened after I left. She stood there quietly, she said it helped her not think. For the first time, she didn't argue. Accidental as it was, sealed my decision. She didn't minimize. Someone who runs toward distraction, realized something she never faced with accountability, that I wasn't ready for partnership. When she left that night, I told her I wasn't coming back unless something fundamentally changed. She drove away slowly. She asked what that meant. And I knew then that the balance had shifted. I said it meant respect without negotiation. She thought telling me to leave. She said I was giving ultimatums. She didn't realize leaving was mine. I'm setting standards. That difference rattled her more than anger ever could. After that night on the porch, Maribel stopped showing up. But she didn't stop spiraling. I didn't hear this directly from her at first. It came through fragments. A mutual friend mentioned she'd been out almost every night. Someone else hinted she wasn't doing well at work. It wasn't gossip so much as observation. The kind that happens when someone's routine collapses and people start noticing. Eventually, Maribel called again. Her voice sounded thinner, like she'd been running on fumes. She said she was exhausted. That everything felt loud and chaotic. She admitted the partying hadn't slowed down after I left. It had intensified. She said staying busy kept her from thinking, from feeling, from sitting with what she'd done. I didn't judge her. I didn't interrupt. I let her talk. Then she said something revealing. Rowan's been around a lot, but it's not the same anymore. That line landed quietly but heavily. The guy best friend she defended so fiercely, the one I was supposed to accept without question, was no longer exciting. He was just there. And just there was never enough for Maribel. She admitted they'd argued. That he got jealous when she talked about me. That he'd made comments implying she'd choose him eventually. Suddenly, the harmless friendship had edges. Expectations. Pressure. I asked her if she saw the pattern. She didn't answer. What struck me most wasn't her discomfort. It was her surprise. She was shocked that the dynamic changed once I removed myself. As if my presence had been the stabilizer all along. As if I'd been quietly holding the balance without realizing it. When the call ended, I felt something strange, relief. Not because she was struggling, but because her struggle confirmed what I already knew. I hadn't imagined the imbalance. I hadn't overreacted. I had simply stepped out of a system that only worked when I absorbed the cost. After that night on the porch, Maribel stopped showing up. Maribel didn't stop spiraling. I didn't hear this directly from her at first. She said, it came through fragments. I need to be honest with you. A mutual friend mentioned she'd been out almost every night. She admitted that the night she told me to leave someone else hinted she wasn't doing well at work. She'd already planned to stay out. It wasn't gossip so much as observation. Already decided that if I objected, the kind that happens when someone's routine collapses. She said she didn't think I'd actually walk out. Eventually, Maribel called again. She said she thought calling my bluff. Her voice sounded thinner, like she'd been running on fumes. I didn't expect consequences. She said she was exhausted quietly. That everything felt loud and chaotic. She admitted the partying hadn't slowed down after I left. That he'd always hovered just close enough to feel relevant. She said staying busy she liked knowing someone wanted her that much. Feeling. But when I left, everything shifted. I didn't judge her. Rowan stopped feeling like a friend. I didn't interrupt and started feeling like an obligation. Then she said something Someone revealing. Who expected more Rowan's been around a lot. Was available. But it's not the same anymore. I didn't think that line landed quietly but heavily. I told her the truth. The guy best friend she defended me so fiercely. You lost me when you laughed instead of without question. She cried no longer excited. Not loudly. He was just not theatrically, and just there was never enough for someone realizing they admitted they'd argued, and that he got jealous when she talked entirely. That he'd made comments implying she'd choose him eventually. And honesty, no matter how late, the harmless friendship had edges. Expectations. Pressure. I asked her if she saw the pattern. She didn't answer. What struck me most wasn't her discomfort. It was her surprise. She was shocked that the dynamic changed once I removed myself. As if my presence had been the stabilizer all along. as if I'd been quietly holding the balance without realizing it. When the call ended, I felt something strange, relief. Not because she was struggling, but because her struggle confirmed what I already knew. I hadn't imagined the imbalance. I hadn't overreacted. I had simply stepped out of a system that only worked when I absorbed the cost. After that conversation, something shifted permanently for me. I stopped wondering if I'd been too harsh, too rigid, too quick to leave. I realized how conditioned I'd become to minimizing myself to keep peace. How often I had accepted discomfort to avoid conflict. Walking away taught me something powerful. Self-respect doesn't announce itself. It acts. I noticed how calm my days had become. No second-guessing. No waiting for the next dismissal disguised as a joke. No feeling like I had to compete with someone who wasn't supposed to be competition at all. Maribel reached out less often after that. When she did, her tone was different. No entitlement. No assumptions. Just distance mixed with regret. I didn't gloat. I didn't punish. I just didn't return to the role she needed me to play. And that was the quietest revenge of all. After that conversation, truly understood it was over didn't come with a dramatic argument. I stopped wondering if it came during a calm exchange when she asked rigid, carefully, too quick to leave. If there was any chance, I realized how conditioned I'd not become to minimizing myself just reset. To keep peace. I told her no. How often I'd explained that relationships don't reset. They evolve away taught me something powerful, and ours had ended the moment respect doesn't announce itself. She asked if I still loved her. I noticed how calm I told her honestly that love without boundaries turns into self-betrayal. No waiting for the next dismissal, and I wasn't willing to betray myself again. No feeling like I had to compete with someone who wasn't supposed to be competition. She just went quiet. At all. That silence reached out less often after that. When we hung up, I felt a strange sense of closure. No entitlement. Not because she understood everything, no assumptions, but because I finally just distance mixed with regret. I hadn't left to make a point. I didn't gloat. I left because staying would have cost me myself. I just didn't return to the role, and that was something I would never gamble again. And that was the quietest revenge of all. Time did what arguments never could. As weeks passed, Rowan slowly disappeared from Maribel's stories. Not in a dramatic way, just quietly fading, like someone who was only important when there was an audience. When she mentioned him now, it was with irritation instead of excitement. He was clingy. He was confusing. He didn't respect boundaries. The irony wasn't lost on me. Maribel admitted that once I left, Rowan started acting differently. He expected more time, more attention, more emotional access. The same behavior she had defended when it made me uncomfortable suddenly felt suffocating when she was the one on the receiving end. She said, "I think I liked knowing he was there, but I didn't actually want him." That sentence said everything. Rowan had never been the prize. He was the safety net she kept just close enough to feel desired. And once the net became the ground, it lost its appeal. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt validated. The discomfort I'd been told was insecurity turned out to be instinct. I hadn't been threatened by Rowan. I'd been warning myself. Time did what arguments Maribel asked if we could meet in person. As weeks passed, neutral place, Rowan slowly disappeared from Maribel's stories. I agreed, not in a dramatic way, but out of quietly fading. She looked different, like someone who was only not dressed up when there was an audience. Not performative. When she mentioned him now, she apologized. Irritation, not for the party, excitement, not for Rowan. He was clingy, dismissing me. He was confusing, for laughing when I asked. He didn't respect boundaries, for assuming I'd never. The irony wasn't lost how far she pushed. Maribel admitted that once I left, I thought love meant Rowan started no matter what. I told her calmly, more time. Love doesn't more survive attention, disrespect, more emotional access. It just teaches people how much they can get away with. The same behavior she had defended when it made me uncomfortable suddenly felt suffocating. No defense. When she was the one on the receiving end. She asked said, if things could ever be different. I think I liked knowing he was there. I told her the truth, but I didn't actually want him. They could have been. That sentence said everything. That was the moment had never she understood the apology wasn't. He was the safety net she kept just close enough to feel desired. And once the net became the ground, it lost its appeal. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt validated. The discomfort I'd been told was insecurity turned out to be instinct. I hadn't been threatened by Rowan. I'd been warning myself. Walking away didn't make my life instantly better, but it made it honest. I stopped questioning my reactions, stopped apologizing for boundaries, stopped shrinking to keep peace. I learned that being secure doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. It means trusting yourself enough to leave when something feels wrong. I rebuilt routines, reconnected with parts of myself I'd muted. I realized how much energy I'd spent managing someone else's emotions at the cost of my own. Maribel didn't become a villain in my story. She became a lesson. A reminder that love without accountability is just convenience wearing romance. And I never wanted to be convenient again. Walking away didn't make my life best friend better and told me to leave if I didn't like it. I stopped
So
questioning my reactions,
not to punish her,
stopped apologizing
not to prove a
for
point,
boundaries,
but because staying
would
would
have
have
meant
teaching
teaching
myself
myself
that my feelings
I learned that
didn't
being
matter.
secure,
She thought
doesn't
telling
mean
me to leave
tolerating
was power.
disrespect. She didn't
It means
realize
trusting
leaving
yourself
was
enough
mine.
to leave when
The quiet
something feels
revenge
wrong.
wasn't watching her
I rebuilt
regret it.
routines.
It was choosing
Reconnected
myself
with parts
without
of meeting
needing
her
her
to
to understand. I
And
realized
that's
how
how
I
I
walked
walked
away
away
with
with
everything
managing
managing
someone
someone
else's
else's emotions at the cost of my own. Maribel didn't become a villain in my story. She became a lesson. A reminder that love without accountability is just convenience wearing romance. And I never wanted to be convenient again.